وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه الكرام ومن اتبع بسنته بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ما بعد، إن شاء الله تبارك وتعالى بعون الله ومشيئته سبحانه وتعالى, by the permission of Allah and His will and with His help, inshallah ta'ala, we want to attempt to bring some benefit from what many of the ulama they said is one of the greatest explanations of a book that all of the Muslims need to study, to understand, because it's the topic that Allah mentions in the Quran in different ways. It's the reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all that He created, so that those different types of creation can bear witness to this thing, this great issue, and that is the Tawheed Allahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Tawheed Allahi jalla fi ula. And that's from the book Fathul Majeed, Shaykh Kitab Tawheed, Fathul Majeed, Shaykh Kitab Tawheed, by Rahman ibn Hassan ibn Muhammad ibn Abdul ibn Sulaiman al-Tamimi al-Najdi, rahimahum Allah ta'ala. May Allah have mercy on all three of them, as that's a man, his son, and his grandson. That is Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, his son Abdur Rahman, and his grandson Hassan. We will be taking comments from Fadilatul Shaykh al-Muhaddith al-Faqih Shaykh Abdur Razaq Ibn Muhsin Badr from the Prophet's Masjid, Tabarak wa ta'ala. And so, inshallah, we will begin, inshallah, Tabarak wa ta'ala. Shaykh Abdur Razaq, he starts by saying, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. And that is, praise be to Allah, Lord of all the worlds. He is alone by Himself without any partners, and He's bearing witness that the Prophet Muhammad is the servant of Allah and His messenger. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam alayhi. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam alayhi. We mentioned this many times. It means Allah is praising the Prophet, and we're asking Allah to raise him, give him his status that Allah promised him as a prophet in this life and the hereafter, and to protect them in this life, and in his grave and on the day of judgment. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Salami mentioned, which is collected in the Muslim Imam Ahmad, it's authentic hadith, where Imam Ahmad said that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man salla alayya wahidan sallallahu alayhi ashr. Man salla alayya wahidan sallallahu alayhi ashr. He said, whoever says sallallahu alayhi wahidan, whoever says the statement, and we say sallallahu alayhi, when we say that, you're asking Allah to praise the Prophet, raise his rank, to give him all of the things that Allah has just promised him. That's what it's meant when we say sallallahu. And when we say alayhi, then this also means that those blessings pour down upon him. They pour down upon him. Subhanahu wa ta'ala pours and sends down the blessings upon him from above. And we said this means it will engulf and envelop that person. They won't be missed with anything from what is being sent down by the Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then wasallam, that he has been saved from anything of harm by the Subhanahu wa ta'ala. In his grave, as the prophets, the bodies don't get desecrated, the animals, insects, I should say, don't eat the bodies of the prophets. And they don't get punishment in the grave. This is all inclusive the meaning. Wasallam. Now, so this Shaykh is mentioning Abdur Razaq as we've been commanded. As a tabarak wa ta'ala, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallim, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi. All who believe, send salutations upon the Prophet. Wa yusallimu taslima, and submit to his way, and a total submission. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala says, inna Allaha, verily Allah, wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi, that verily Allah yusalluna on the Prophet and the malaika. Here Allah yusalluna alayhi means Allah praises him. Allah Azza wa Jal talks about him in the heavens. Allah also raises his status and his prestige in the land, that we have to say and make dua for him no matter who you are as a Muslim. And this is part of what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Inshirah, where Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said, Alam nashrah laka sadrak wa wada'na anka wizrak alladhi anqadha dhahrak wa rafa'na laka dhikra. And I have made raised and up in the land the mention of you. So this is part of the meaning of Allah yusallu alayhi. Allah Azza wa Jal raises the status of the Prophet. He mentions the Prophet in lofty way in the heavens, and he has caused the people and commanded the people to do that by asking Allah every time you hear his name, every time you say his name, every time you read his name, or you hear someone else say his name, somebody should say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is praising and making dua for the Prophet. Now, the Shaykh said, وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَأَصْحَابِهِ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَأَصْحَابِهِ. The ulama, they say, وَعَلَى آلِهِ. Ali means one that follows the Prophet. Ali means one who follows the Prophet. And the many ulama, they say that it includes the Sahaba. If you just say وَعَلَى آلِهِ by itself, and we don't say وَأَصْحَابِهِ, which Ali could mean family members, and Ashabi could take the meaning of those who accepted Islam during the time of the Prophet. They actually met him, gave allegiance to him, and they died as a Muslim. That's Sahabi. That's Ashabi, plural, his companions. So if you say وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَسَلَّمْ, then this means those who follow him, who didn't meet him, and his companions. But if you say وَعَلَى آلِهِ, and then you add وَأَصْحَابِهِ, then alihi means those who follow him, and ashabihi means his companions. Alihi means those who follow him, and it means the companions if it's by itself. If it comes with the statement washabihi, then alihi means those who follow him after believing in him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then ashabihi, his companions. And Shaykh said ajma'in, all of them. Ajma'in is important because, as many of the ulama said, with regards to the conflict the fitna of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Muawiyah. Many people talk bad about Muawiyah because of that incident. Many people talk bad about Muawiyah. Some of them even make takfir of Muawiyah from the Shia. Allah musta'an. But here, when you say, Yani, washabihi, his companions, and you say ajma'in, which is sifa, Yani, washabihi ajma'in, which is Yani, tawkeed, to emphasize. Yani. Some will say ajma'in also means what is considered emphasis. Yani, washabihi ajma'in. Also, some say ashabihi sifa ula wa jama'in sifa thani. Two descriptions of those who the Prophet is and those who are mentioning Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they're praising the Prophet and making dua for him, and they're also praising and making dua for the description of those who are his companions and all of the companions, not some of them and the others are left out. So this includes Muawiyah. It's very important. وهو في جنة ومن أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ولو كان يعني شيء من الفتنة أصبح بينه وبين علي بن أبي طالب وغير من أصحابه هو من صحابة الكرام وهو من أهل الجنة وهو يعني الذي يتضمن في قوله وأصحابي أجمعين. And no matter what happened between them, he is included in those companions, those whom Tabarak wa Ta'ala is praised, and those who yani, will be in the Jannah. So this is an example of why he said وَأَصْحَابِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ, why the scholars mentioned that yani, statement. Jazakumullah khair. Shaykh says, and after that, yani, praise, which you should mention Allah Azza wa Jal. That's in the salutation of Salam in the beginning. Now he's going to make some dua and go into the introduction about the book. So, back in the Shaykh had started, Shaykh Abdur Razaq. This is his introduction in the class where he's about to have somebody read Fathul Majeed, the book that is the explanation of Kitab Tawhid, the grandson of Shaykh Islam Muhammad Abdul. So he's making in his opening in his lesson. And one of the things the Shaykh he does, Shaykh Abdur Razaq, he praises Allah and he sends salutations upon the Prophet and makes dua for the Prophet. And he includes the companions of the Prophet and the followers of the Prophet. The followers of the Prophet, Tabi'een, Itba' Tabi'een, those generations after that, all the way to the last day, which includes us. When we say Alihi, it includes us. He's making dua for us. Similarly, when you make the tashahhud, and you say, وَعَلَى عِبَادِ اللَّهِ الصَّالِحِينَ, and upon the righteous servants of Allah, that includes us, before us, the angels, before, some have said, that includes the believers from amongst the jinns. It's inclusive in us as well as those before us. So here, the Shaykh, he praises Allah as a Razaq, Allah Ta'ala. And then he, after that, makes salutation for the Prophet, makes dua for the Prophet, his companions, those who follow him, and then after that he starts to make dua. And this is an example of how you get your dua answered. One of the ways you praise Allah, you make salutation of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, then you make dua. And this is similar to how Allah Azza wa Jal teaches us with Surah Al-Fatiha. You praise Allah, you mention His names and attributes, you acknowledge the Tawheed of Allah, and then after that you ask Allah in the end, dua. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, this dua. So this is the formula to praise Allah Send salutations upon the Prophet, his companions, make dua for those who follow the Prophet, and then you ask Allah. So Shaykh is about to make dua. Allahumma atina, Allahumma, he said, oh Allah, Allahumma atina bi khair. So oh Allah, give us that which is good. Wa barakah, and that which is blessings. Allahumma atina, yani bi khair wa barakah. Oh Allah, give us that which contains goodness and blessings. Muna alayna bi ilmin nafi'ah, and bestow upon us knowledge that's beneficial. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una. Oh Allah, give us that of knowledge which is beneficial for us. Because some knowledge you can get, it can hurt you. Some knowledge you can get, you misuse it. Some knowledge you get, Allah, it has no benefit. You can't grasp it. You can't conceptualize it. You don't use it right. So it's very important. Dua. Oh Allah, give us knowledge. Allahumma atina yanfa'una, that which will benefit us. Wa yanfa'una bima alamtana, and make what we learn something that we can use. So you have two things: something that's beneficial and something that you use that's beneficial. وَزِدْنَا عِلْمًا, and to give us more knowledge than you give us. Don't give us knowledge and stop. وَزِدْنَا عِلْمًا, give us more knowledge. Keep it coming. Don't give us some knowledge and that's it. Leave us astray. Allahumma aslih lana sha'nana kullah. He said, oh Allah, rectify for us all of our affairs. He didn't say some of our affairs. He said all of our affairs. وَلَا تَخِلْنَا, and don't abandon us and leave us. إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِنَا, to ourselves. To ourselves mean our desires, what we like, what we think, what we feel. Allahumma musta'an. طرفة عين, for the blink of an eye. And all the ulama use this طرفة عين because they can say other expressions, but how long does it take to blink the eye? If you do a single blink, that's not very long at all. Very short, in fact. We might say a second, or they say lahda, a moment. So this, the Shaykh is saying, don't leave us to ourselves, period. But he's emphasizing, even if it be that short, don't leave us to ourselves for that amount of short time, because it is worse than someone, Allahumma musta'an, can imagine to be left for that short period of time. And if you're destroyed for being left to your desires for that short period of time, then what about daqiqa, daqiqatain, sa'a, sa'atain, yom, yomain, usbur, shahr, shuhur, sineen, Allahumma musta'an. Then what about being left to your own desires, your own destruction? For a moment, a minute, or two, not just a second, but a minute. It's longer than a second. 2 minutes is longer than a second. An hour, a day, a few days, months, years. A'udhu billahi min sharri. So it's very important. This is something you should make dua. The Prophet ﷺ made this dua. Shaykh Abdur Razaq is saying this because it's from the Sunnah. He's just making dua, repeating what the Prophet ﷺ says. So all you heard, the Prophet used to supplicate these words. He's a blessed, al-da'iyah wal-adhkar min Nabina Kareem. These are blessed mentions, blessed supplications from our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Don't leave us to ourselves for the blink of an eye, for a moment. That's from our Nabi. Allahumma atina anfusna taqwaha. Oh Allah, give our souls taqwa. Wa zakkaha, and purify, clean them from filth. وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. You are the best and the only one to purify our souls. أَنْتَ وَلِيُّهَا. You are the guardian of it, وَمَوْلَاهَا, and the one that helps and supports our soul. All this is dua. It's dua from the Prophet ﷺ. Dua from our Nabi ﷺ. Dua يعني ورد في سنة يعني المطهرة, which has been reported in his pure authentic sunnah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Now, the Shaykh, he says, continue making dua, Allahumma yani ihdina ila sirat al-mustaqima. He says, and oh Allah, guide us. Allahumma ihdina ilayka. Allahumma ihdina yani ilayka siratan mustaqima. And oh Allah, guide us to you siratan mustaqiman, on a path that is upright and a path that is guidance. Now, this is subhanAllah, this is a dars by itself. Allahu Akbar Kabir. Allahumma ihdina ilayka. Oh Allah, guide us to you. Because we can be guided to something else. Ila tariqan siratan mustaqiman, which is a path that is straight and upright and guided. Allahumma musta'an. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. To all of that dua that the Shaykh he opened with before he starts his introduction. Now, he said, Thumma mabad. Now I'm going to start. The Shaykh is saying the topic at hand, the book, Majeed, Shaykh Kitab Tawhid. He said, فَبَيْنِ يَدَيْنَا, and that which is in front of us, which will be presented tonight, the Shaykh is saying, Kitab Mubarak. Kitab Mubarak, a blessed book. وَمُؤَلِّفٌ, and the author of this book. That one who wrote this book, Azimun Qayyim. Azimun Qayyim, he has a lofty status. Azimun Qayyim. Qayyim means status. Sometimes they say, yani, nafis, meaning precious. Here he said, Azimun Qayyim, a tremendous status with Allah, with the angels, with the believers in this ummah, for the juhud, yani, Mubarak, the blessed effort that he put forth, as you'll see as the Shaykh he describes this work in the author. He said, and why is that? He's about to explain and mention the next characteristic or description that shows why did he say Azimun yani Qayyim. Al-Mu'allif yani Azimun Qayyim. Why did he say that the author of this work is a tremendous, he has a tremendous status? في أشرف أمور. في أشرف أمور. في أشرف أمور. في أشرف أمور. With regards to some of the most loftiest issues. So he is going to present some of the most loftiest issues and explain these issues, which makes him lofty and great. If he's going to explain and convey and help and aid with regards to some of the most loftiest issues, then that makes him Azimul Qayyim. His status and his place, tremendous as well. وَأَجَلِّهَا وَأَعْظَمِهَا. And from amongst the great and the lofty issues that this part is going to explain, the greatest from amongst them and the loftiest from amongst them, ala itlaq, absolutely, when you take them and you try to see and put them into categories. So you have Ashraf al-Umur, the greatest and the most lofty affairs. But just as actions have levels, whether they're good or bad, then Ashraf al-Umur, great affairs, they have their levels as well. And from amongst them will be the one that's ajal wa a'zam, the one that's greatest and the most highest and lofty. The Shaykh said, Tawheed Allahi Azza wa Jal, which is the Tawheed of Allah, Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And here, what's meant is the worship of Allah. The worship of Allah after correct belief. This is the most loftiest of the loftiest issues that a person can embark upon, can devote himself to, can have in this life and in the hereafter as a lofty affair. This is what makes the author Azimun Qayyum, because what he presents is A'dam wa Ashraf min Ashraf al-Umur wa A'dam minhum wa Ajal at Tawheed Allahi Azza wa Jal. And from amongst the top of them, and the most greatest and lofty is the worship, the Tawheed Allahi Azza wa Jal, the worship of Allah, the mighty, the sublime. The Shaykh Abdur Razaq is الذي هو حق الله على عبيد. حق الله على عبيد. And we mentioned this last night when we were talking about this concept from the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari. We said that Imam al-Bukhari بدأ في صحيحه يعني كتاب يعني الوحي, Kitab al-Wahy, the conversation about revelation. Then he says Bab كيف بدأ بالوحي, how the revelation first began and came to the Prophet. وآخر كتاب وأبواب بوا يعني إمام البخاري رحمه الله تعالى كتاب التوحيد. Now, and the last thing that he brought of a discussion is the discussion of Tawheed, and the first chapter, Bab Da'watu Nabi ila La ilaha illallah aw ila Tawheed Allah Azza wa Jal, how the Prophet called to the worship of Allah, and he named it Tawheed. Now, so this is the ajal wa a'zam min ashraf al-umuri. It is the most loftiest, the highest. You can't go any higher and you can't get any better than the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that's lofty religious comes after the Tawheed of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. So here the Shaykh said, وَهُوَ تَوْحِيدِ اللَّهِ وَهُوَ حَقَّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعَبِيدِ. So what is the Tawheed? Shaykh Abdur Razaq said, هُوَ حَقَّ اللَّهِ عَلَى عَبِيدِ. عَلَى عَبِيدِ. He didn't say عَلى الْعَبْ. عَلى عَبِيدِ. Why did he say عَبِيدِ? Like we said last night, because يعني الصيغة عَبِيدِ على وزن يعني فعيلي. عَبِيدِ على وزن فعيلي, which means the smallest action, فعيل. عبيد فعيل. هو وزن تصغير. وزن يعني ماذا؟ تصغير. It is to make something small. This wasn't. So if you say al-kitabu, you said kutubun. Al-kitabu, the book. Kitabun, a book. Kutubun, books. Kutab, small miniature, like we call it pamphlet. Pamphlet is a small book. The smallest you can get. There's nothing smaller than a pamphlet. That's called kutab. Now, you have kadalik, yani al-fi'lu, the action. You have fi'lun, an action. You have af'al, actions. And you have fu'ayl, a small action. And here, the Shaykh, he said, act, servant, yani you have al-abdu, a servant, the servant. Ibad, servants, and then you have yani abid, smallest servant. So at-Tawheed, as Shaykh Abdur Razaq mentioned, huwa haqq Allahi ala abidi. It is the worship of Allah, which is the right of Allah on the most seemingly smallest, insignificant of His servants. Now, no one escapes this obligation of the Tawheed, because it's the right of Allah on the smallest of the servant, meaning the least from amongst the men and jinn. They're obligated to this. No one escapes it. Big nor small, rich nor poor, famous or unknown, white, black, Arab, non-Arab, male, female, no matter what your tribe or language, nobody escapes it. They're on the whole, مَا حَقَّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعَبِيدِ, because it is the right of Allah on all of His servants. Min al-thaqalain, from the jinn and mankind, as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has mentioned many places in His Quran. He said, الَّذِي لِأَجْلِهِ. And this whole issue of worship Allah, it is the reason خَلَقَهُمْ, that Allah created them in the first place. Any creation that Allah Azza wa Jal created, يعني خَلَقَهُمْ لِأَجْلِهِ التَّوْحِيدِ. He created them for one thing, to submit to Him, to bear witness to Him, and to obey Him, not to obey anyone else, to worship Him, and to proclaim that issue that no one should be obeyed, absolute, and worshiped, and called on, and depended on, and assisted from other than Allah Azza wa Jal. That's the reason we created. And I remember, Wallahu Musta'an, have this conversation one time in one of the masjid when I was in Durham, North Carolina one time. Well, that place is considered home, where we lived there, where we traveled many years there in that area. And one of the imams, I won't mention his name because people are not in need of knowing his names. People get testy and feelings get hurt. But we were talking about the Tawheed. And I said the reason we were created was to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that person said, that's not the reason we were created. Allah was not. And I said, how could you say that? Allah said, وَمَا خَلَقَتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And here we understand in Arabic, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ. Whenever Allah starts a sentence with the ma nafi, negating something, this is lil-hasr. This is to make it like absolute. But this is to give the meaning as if this is the only thing you were created for. You may be created also to be tested. As Allah said, لِنَبَلُوكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, is to have you demonstrate which one of your best deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned that we created subhanahu wa ta'ala to live and to die. We were also created as a test. Now, but the main reason we created to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all of that. Now, so Imam said this was not the reason that we were created. Allah musta'an. What other reason we have been created? Other than Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala mentioned, مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ هو الذي سبب خلقنا الله سبحانه وتعالى أجله وهو التوحيد. This is the reason Allah created anybody and everybody from His creation. Now, Shaykh Abdur Razaq said, وَلِأَجْلِ أَوْجَدَهُمْ أوجدهم this is the reason that Allah Azza wa Jal gives you back your life. This is the reason that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala invented you, made you, created you for the worship. And then the Shaykh, he cites a piece of evidence to prove this. He says, كما قال الله تعالى وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. And Allah himself says in his book, and I have not created the jinn and the mankind except for one reason, to worship me. To worship me. إلا ليعبدون. And if you read the ayah with the vowels, إلا ليعبدوني, يا يضيف إلى متكلم. دل على أن الله يتكلم. يتكلم متى يشاء كيف يشاء إلى من يشاء. لأن الله سبحانه وتعالى في آخر هذه كلمة الله عز وجل ماذا أضاف هذه العبادة لنفسه ولأجله في آية كثيرة، وهو أوضح الآية في القرآن دل على هذا أن العبادة هو لله سبحانه وتعالى وحده لا شريك له. And this is mentioned in many ayahs, but this is one of the clearest ayahs of the Quran, because in the end of it, people don't read it like ya'buduni, but if you look at it, the ya is at the end, showing that this thing is for Allah, wala ghayri, and no one other than Him, as he begin the ayah, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا, and the illa istithna يدل على أنه وحده سبحانه وتعالى شريك له. And illa here, the illa, when it comes in the end of the phrase, it shows that thing is only to be done for Allah, or it's in a class by itself. And this is the worship, the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. The Shaykh continues, Abdur Razaq Ibn ta'ala, said, وَلِأَجْلِ أَرْسَلَ رُسُولِهِ. وَلِأَجْلِهِ أَرْسَلَ رُسُولُهُ. And this is the same reason Allah sent His messengers. The messengers that He dispatched, that He sent, for one reason, because of this worship. And that's why their message was that to their people. Ya qawmi, i'budullah, ma min ilahin ghayr. All people worship Allah. La ilaha illallah. There's no deity worthy of worship except Allah. This is the message of all of the prophets and messengers, because this is the reason they were created and the reason they were sent. وَكُتُبُهُمْ الْعَظِيمَةِ. And this is the same reason they have been given magnificent books of revelation, because of the Tawheed. Because of the Tawheed. وَهُوَ أَشْرَفُ الْمَطَالِبِ. And it is the most loftiest thing that's sought by Allah from you. وَأَجَلُ مَقَاصِدِ. And it has the most highest and loftiest aim in mind for you to worship Allah. Maqasid. وَأَعْظَمَ غَايَاتِ. And it has the most greatest ending for you that you should achieve out of all of the things you have. Those things are tools for you to achieve this end from those means, and that is the worship of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Alayhi yubna deen Allahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Shaykh said, therefore this is the thing, that the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is founded and built and based upon the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the introduction the Shaykh is given, Shaykh Abdur Razaq. Wallahi, we could just stop here. That last statement, الَّذِي يُبْنَى عَلَيْهِ دِينِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ, that which the deen is based upon. Because you have now all of this tashkik, doubt, ماذا ميل إلى وحدة الأديان ويعني الجمع الكتب ويعني ibadat, all of this, consolidating religion, worship, consolidating the relations, making deen compact, and subhanahu rabbil alameen. This is a proof that they don't understand what is the reason we have been placed on earth, why we have been created in the first place, and they don't understand that message that the Prophet was sent with, that is Islam. They don't understand the Tawheed of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, the worship of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Allahumma musta'an. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Hadahum Allah wa iyyahu. Wa alayhi tatawaqqaf. The Shaykh said, therefore, this is what we should stop upon, the deen of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, not to go any further, not to make any other way, the way other than the Tawheed. Not to make any other thing a sa'ada. فَعَلَيْهِ تَوَقَّى. The Shaykh said, we should stop here to make a sa'ada. This is what we should seek as a way of happiness and that which is joy for us. This is deen of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala fi dunya wal akhirah, in this life and the hereafter. He said, فَلَاحًا وَلَا سَعَادَ إِلَّا بِهِ. And there's no success nor enjoyment and true reality of enjoyment and success except by and with this Tawheed of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. إِلَّا بِتَحْقِيقِهِ except by taking it for what it's worth, applying it, and showing the realities of Tawheed, actualizing this in our belief, in our actions, in our life, in our deen. And the Shaykh is going to talk about the book, inshallah. تم كفي في هذه المجالس بهذا يكتفي بها صلى على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. الحمد لله رب العالمين. And I think this is sufficient for just a start of what is the Tawheed. Why is it such an issue that people written books like this, and why this book became one of the greatest books written, explained, and to be encouraged to read because of everything you heard about the issue of the Tawheed and its reason that we have been created. And inshallah, we'll stop here. So, Nabina Muhammad.